الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فأولئك هم الخاسرون وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أرسله الله شاهدًا ومبشرًا ونذيرًا وداعيًا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجًا منيرًا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد. We begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we praise Him in a manner that He alone deserves to be praised. And we seek His guidance and assistance and His forgiveness, and we place in Him alone our trust and our conviction. And I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, without associate or partner, and that Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was indeed His servant and His prophet, and the finality of the messenger sent as a mercy to all of humanity. And I precaution myself and I precaution the believers to the taqwa of Allah, that we be mindful and we be heedful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we do not die and we do not meet Him except in a state of full submission. And as I welcome the believers into the house of Allah on this blessed Friday, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower upon us all and our families and the believers across the globe His mercy and His bounty and His favor, and He protect us all from the chastisement of the hellfire, and He make us instead from the inhabitants of the paradise. Allahumma ameen. Today, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I would like to talk about two virtuous households. Two households that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has expressed His divine approval for in the Quran. And these are two households that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made inseparable in His Quran, as they are connected by way of lineage and by way of marriage. And they were contemporaries in history, meaning that they lived at the very same time, and most importantly, they resembled one another in virtue. And that is the household of Imran and the household of Zakaria alayhimus salam. And as for the household of Imran, Allah Ta'ala, He says, Inna Allah astafa Adama wa Nuhan wa ala Ibrahim wa ala Imran ala al-alameen. He says that Allah Ta'ala has certainly chosen Adam, and He has chosen Nuh, and He has chosen Ibrahim alayhi salam, or the household of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the household of Imran alayhi salam. And this means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon them certain virtues and blessings exclusive to the exception of others, primarily the blessing of nubuwah, prophethood, and blessed lineage. And this household of Imran that included his wife Hannah and their daughter Maryam and their grandson Isa alayhi salam, it was connected to the household of Zakaria alayhi salam by way of lineage, both tracing their lineage back to Dawood alayhi salam. And then they were also connected through marriage, as Zakaria is said alayhi salam to have married the sister of Hannah, and others, they said it could have been a daughter as well. And from that marriage was born none other than Yahya alayhi salam, making him the maternal cousin of Isa alayhi salam. And Allah Ta'ala, He says regarding the household of Zakaria alayhi salam and their virtue, إنهم كانوا يسارعون في الخيرات ويدعوننا رغبا ورهبا وكانوا لنا خاشعين. Here Allah Ta'ala, He says about the household of Zakaria that they used to race and they used to compete in pursuit of good, and that they used to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in both hope and in fear, and that they were before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala awestruck and humble. And this is the first quality of virtuous households, that they have a virtuous culture, a culture of righteousness inside of that household. Each of the members of that home being upon the same wavelength. And Allah Ta'ala, He described this virtuous culture when He said they would race in pursuit of good. And this means so much, and it could probably take an entire khutbah just to unpack this one characteristic. Because when you're racing for something, you have to be ready. And when you're competing for something, there's a sense of anticipation that you're looking for that opportunity. And there is initiative that is born out of this element, that you're looking for that opportunity. And racing doesn't mean that you only complete the act first, but it also means that you strive to do that action in the very best way. You want to be first and you want to be best. And so this is the characteristic and the culture of the household of Zakaria alayhi salam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said that they were people of supplication, that they would call upon us in hope and also in fear. No matter what mood they were in, no matter what circumstance their life presented, no matter what the weather was outside on that day, they would still be calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all conditions. And to clarify, calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in hope and in fear, it doesn't only mean that you call upon Him because you hope in Him and you call upon Him because you fear Him. Certainly that is a great portion of the meaning, but it also means that you turn to Allah and you confide in Allah with your worldly hopes and your worldly fears as well. That which you hope and you fear for yourself, and that which you hope and you fear for your family and the ummah at large. And so they were people that communicated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That in this household, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wasn't a second thought. He wasn't a side conversation. Rather, He was the centerpiece. So you can imagine the conversations that would take place at the table and in the living room, for example. And then He says that they were before Allah khashi'een. They had this reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this would impact their actions as well. And a comprehensive example of all of these characteristics, one glimpse into the life of Yahya alayhi salam. As Ibn Kathir, he records in his stories of the prophets, Qasas an-Nabiyyin, he said that Yahya alayhi salam, he had been missing for 3 days. And Zakaria, his father, is looking for him, and he can't find him anywhere. So you can imagine how worried he would become, until finally on the 3rd day he found him. And when he found him, he was weeping inside of a grave, a hole that he had dug for himself. And so this is something that took Zakaria alayhi salam back. And so he inquired with his son, I am looking for you for 3 days and I find you here and you are weeping inside of this hole. Yani, what is going on? And Yahya alayhi salam, in his purity and his righteousness and his virtuous characteristic, he responded to his father saying, oh my dear father, did you not say to me, did you not tell me that between paradise and hellfire there is a bridge that can only be crossed by the tears of those who weep? A bridge that can only be crossed by the tears of those who weep. And so it was the teaching and the mentorship of his father that he internalized that actually drove him to that place. He wanted to put himself in a scenario to stimulate the necessary sentiment that would earn him safety from the hellfire. And this was the culture of their family. And every household has a culture, values, norms, traditions, patterns, habits that they share inside of their home. Some households, they are known for their da'wah. Others are known for their relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 3, 4, 5 memorizers in one home. Others are known to be athletes and doctors. Every family generally has its own characteristic. And we see this reality, as they say, like father, like son, or like daughter, like mother. We see this reality as well in Maryam alayhi salam, that she shared so many different characteristics with her mother, Hannah, as even mentioned in the Quran. That we find, for example, when the angel Jibril alayhi salam comes to Maryam, she testifies to her own chastity. وَلَمْ أَكُ بَغِيًّا. How am I going to have a son when I have never been unchaste? And just as she testified to her own chastity, when she returned to her people holding Isa alayhi salam, it was the people who testified to the chastity of her mother. As they said, وَمَا كَانَتْ أُمُّكِ بَغِيًّا. The very same characteristic, we find that it is in both the mother and the daughter. And just as Hannah, the mother of Maryam, she used to seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from ash-shaytan on behalf of her offspring. We also find that Maryam alayhi salam, she inherited that same characteristic. And so when the angel appeared to her, immediately she sought refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we have to consider, what is the culture that we are establishing in our households? And what is my role as a father, as a son, as a sibling, as a mother, in contributing to that culture? Am I bringing forth virtue, or am I bringing forth vice? What am I passing down to my children? And we find that this culture, it is in fact a generational culture. Not just from father to son and mother to daughter, but as for the household of Imran, it goes all the way back to Zakaria. It goes all the way back, rather, to Dawood alayhi salam. And we know that Dawood alayhi salam, he was known for his devotion. He was known for his prayer, and he was known for his fasting. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he testified to this reality, saying what? Ahabbu salati ilallah salatu Dawood. That the most beloved prayer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the prayer of Dawood. Wa ahabbu siyamu ilallah, or ahabbu siyami ilallah siyamu Dawood. And the most beloved fasting to Allah, it was the fast of Dawood alayhi salam. And so we find that just as Dawood alayhi salam, he used to retreat to the mihrab. He used to take asylum in this place of devotion and spiritual retreat. We find that later on in Maryam alayhi salam and Zakaria as well. In fact, the only people who are mentioned in the Quran in relation to the mihrab is Dawood alayhi salam and his son Sulaiman, and then comes Zakaria and Maryam. As Allah Ta'ala, he says, وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ نَبَأُ الْخَصْمِ إِذْ تَسَوَّرُوا الْمِحْرَابِ. Has the news come to you of the disputants when they climbed over into the mihrab? إِذْ دَخَلُوا عَلَى دَاوُودَ فَفَزِعَ مِنْهُمْ. Until they entered upon Dawood alayhi salam, and he became startled by their presence. But the thing that we have to consider is, why did they go looking for Dawood in the mihrab? Perhaps it was because it was a place that he was known to frequent. Home away from home. And Sulaiman alayhi salam, of the foremost things that he used to build, or rather he used to command the jinn to build, was the maharib. As many of the linguists mention that this is the plural for the mihrab. And so this brings us to the second characteristic of virtuous households, that their lives are centered around the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have a virtuous culture in their home. And the first place, or the foremost place that benefits from that virtuous culture, is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we find that the mother of Maryam alayhim as-salam was so dedicated to the service of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so concerned that even before the child was born, while the child was in the womb, she had already dedicated the child to the service of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rabbi inni nadhartu laka ma fi batni muharrara. This is how much she was concerned for the service of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said, my Lord, I declare, I promise, I vow to you what is inside of my womb entirely for your sake. Use it as you will. And she was so concerned, as many of the commentators said, that she failed to consider what if the child was a female child? وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى, and the male is not like the female, right? And in those days, it was normal and customary to actually dedicate the male children to the service of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so she found herself in a dilemma when the child was born. How is she now going to fulfill her vow? And then we find the very same concern in Zakaria alayhi salam. And we talked about this dynamic of calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in hope and in fear. And he himself said, وَإِنِّي خِفْتُ الْمَوَالِيَ مِنْ وَرَائِي. He expressed his fear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not a fear here of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, this is a fear regarding what is to come after him. Who will be in charge of the affairs of the religion? Who will be in charge of the affairs of his family? And so he's concerned, just like the mother of Maryam alayha salam, about the status of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the perpetuation of Allah's deen in the earth. And look at their mindset, a mindset that may sound foreign to some of the believers in the earth today. They were not thinking to themselves and for their families, what can the house of Allah do for me and my family? Rather, they were thinking, what can me and my family do for the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بما فيه من الآيات والذكر الحكيم. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو التواب الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Now, despite the similarities of these two virtuous households, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He presents an amazing contrast between Zakaria alayhi salam and Hannah, the mother of Maryam alayha salam. That in Zakaria alayhi salam you have an elderly man, and in Hannah you have an elderly woman. And Zakaria is given a son in Yahya alayhi salam, whereas Hannah is given a daughter in Maryam alayhi salam. And the dua of Zakaria alayhi salam is before conception, as his wife, she was previously barren. Whereas the dua of Hannah, it was while she was pregnant and also after she had delivered the child. And we find that Hannah, she is the one who named her child Maryam. Inni sammaytuha Maryam. I have named her Maryam, and she gave her what was actually a famous name, as even the sister of Musa and Harun carried the name Maryam as well. But as for Yahya alayhi salam, it was not his father who named him. Rather, it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gave him this name. Right? As he says, Ya Zakaria, inna nubashiruka bi ghulamin ismuhu Yahya. Oh, Zakaria, we give you the news of a male child. His name is Yahya. Lam naj'al lahu min qablu samiyya. And we did not give anyone before this specific name, right? And this is impeccable linguistics. This is an impeccable presentation unfolding before our eyes. And what is most profound is that this is not the manipulation of a fictional author that can determine the beginning and the end and all of the outcomes and the facts. Rather, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His divine decree, authored the lives of real human beings. And one dynamic benefit that we can take from this is that it doesn't matter if you're an elderly woman or an elderly man, and it doesn't matter if you are a young lady that has never even been touched or intimate with a man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who brings forth life, right? And that no matter if you are old or you are young or you are male or you are female, if you are a prophet or a non-prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can make things happen for you. إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونَ. Right? And so we can learn from this example so many things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have to know and we have to be certain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does for the people of virtue what He does not do for the people of vice. And I want to conclude with one last point, inshallah, and that is about the lofty ambitions and intentions of these figures. That yes, they both desired a male child. And in our times and in history, people have desired male children for many different reasons. For status, to carry on the family name, to take over the family business, to boast, as did the man in Surah Kahf. It was a sense of pride, as it was for the Arab in the time of Jahiliyyah. However, this was not their intention for desiring male children. Rather, they had the highest ambitions and the loftiest intentions. They desired male children so that they could be of the service to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so in reality, they were not by their supplication asking to receive something from Allah. Rather, they were asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to receive something from them. And this is the highest caliber of supplication. Thus, she said, the mother of Maryam, فَتَقَبَّلْ مِنِّي. So accept this from me. Receive this from me. And so often we ask of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but how often do we look for an opportunity to offer something to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us individually and as families people of virtue. And may He rectify the affair in the state of our households and our offspring. And may He mend the relationships between husband and wife, brother and sister, and the ummah across the globe. Allahumma laka alhamdu fil awwalina wa laka alhamdu fil akhirina wa laka alhamdu fi kulli waqtin wa hin. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به. واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. قوموا إلى صلاتكم يرحمكم الله. يا إمام.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. كيف الأحوال؟
Please, briefly after the salah, there's a very, very important announcement, and the administration is asking that everybody remain just for an extra few minutes, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ولقد آتينا لقمان الحكمة أن اشكر لله ومن يشكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه ومن كفر فإن الله غني حميد. وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يا بني إنها إن تك مثقال حبة من خردل فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأت بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير. يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانه عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. May I please have just 1 minute of your time?